Welcome back to our regular session. We just finished up with closed session. On our agenda, we have a 6.1 presentation from Alberta Capital Airshed, and I believe this presenter is going to be presenting virtually for us.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
We sure are, yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm just going to share a presentation here. There we are. If you're able to please confirm that you're able to see that.
As we're just running through that to get it set up here, are you able to just quickly introduce yourself before you present?
Yes, certainly. My name is Colton Arabeski. I'm the Engagement and Membership Coordinator for Alberta Capital Airshed.
Perfect, thank you, and I do believe we have the visual here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Sorry about that. My apologies, give me one moment here. Everything went far too fast. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. So, why does air quality matter? We all breathe the same air. Air quality affects everyone, every day, regardless of your age or background. There are significant health impacts associated with poor air quality. This can include respiratory and cardiovascular effects, effects on neurological and brain health, and links to depression and anxiety disorders, and more. We also see vulnerable populations at a higher risk. Not everyone is impacted equally. Children and infants, seniors, outdoor workers, people with pre-existing conditions, pregnant people and unborn children, people exercising outdoors are all impacted more by poor air quality. And air quality can impact our daily life. Yesterday and today, for example, during poor air quality events, people may have to limit outdoor activities and sports, school and work attendance can be impacted, and it also increases healthcare visits and costs. We're seeing an increase, of course, of poor air quality days due to wildfires and climate change in recent years, and so this is very top of mind for a lot of residents of the Alberta Capital Airshed region. So who is Alberta Capital Airshed? We're responsible for monitoring, evaluating, and reporting the outdoor air quality, including the Air Quality Health Index, or AQHI. Our boundaries expand north to Athabasca and south to Camrose and Wetaskiwin area, with a lot of our monitoring concentrated in and around the capital region, as shown on the map. As a nonprofit, ACA receives funding from three primary streams, including monitoring agreements, grants, and membership fees, which include emitters and others such as municipalities like Beaumont. At ACA, we actively engage with communities to raise air quality awareness, share data through knowledge translation, and provide education. ACA is one of 10 airsheds within Alberta, and the 10 airsheds form the Alberta Airsheds Council. Together, airsheds operate over 85 continuous monitoring stations and hundreds of other monitoring sites that measure a variety of air quality parameters. Over 85% of Alberta's population lives within an airshed. ACA uses several different methods to monitor air quality, including continuous monitoring stations, integrated sampling, sensor-based, and microsensor technology. Together, this allows us to collect and provide broad, accurate data to support public reporting and community health. Continuous monitoring stations provide near instantaneous measurements of ambient concentrations of many pollutants, including sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, ground level ozone, fine particulate matter, carbon monoxide, and more. All monitoring stations are also equipped with meteorological equipment to assess the impact of local conditions on ambient air. The data collected at many of our continuous monitoring stations is used to calculate the Air Quality Health Index. ACA also has a growing network of fine particulate matter, or PM2.5 microsensors, and they're affordable, easy to use, and they allow for community-level air quality monitoring. By placing those in different locations, we can see more detailed variations in air quality, identify hotspots, and understand local sources. Involving the community in setting up sensors also builds awareness and ownership around air quality issues, and they're a great source of air quality data during wildfire smoke events. Our monitoring network collects a lot of data, so most parameters are collecting data every minute of the day, 24/7, 365 days of the year. What do we do with all this data? Live real-time data is available on our website, and it's also used by the provincial and federal governments to provide communities with the AQHI. Beyond that, the data is collated for reporting to regulators and stakeholders, and it's analyzed for insights and trends in air quality. The data also goes through a rigorous quality assurance and validation program where all data and reports are scrutinized to ensure accuracy. So we have two streams of data available on our website: the public-facing live data map on the left side of the red line, which shows real-time air quality data from our stations and microsensors. And then we also have our members portal, where members like the City of Beaumont can access historical data, comparison tools, calendar plots, exceedance reports, and more. So as members, City of Beaumont has access to monthly and annual reports that highlight and analyze local air quality monitoring data. What else do we do at ACA? We have a robust education and outreach program. We engage with the community and our members in a variety of ways. We attend many of our members' events throughout the year and share information about ACA and air quality. We have free air quality educational resources available for teachers. We host clean air webinars throughout the year, touching on various air quality topics of interest with recordings available online. And we're active on social media. You can find us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn at YEG Airshed. We also have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and our community guide to wildfire smoke is a members-only resource that we recently developed, designed to support Alberta's municipalities and other organizations in planning for and responding to wildfire smoke events. So at the beginning of November, we held our 4th Clean Air Forum, which is a conference that we host, providing the opportunity for information exchange and dialogue amongst air quality stakeholders. We work with our partners in ways just like this, providing air quality information to the public and interested organizations. We also, alongside the the Guide to Wildfire Smoke, launched our Air Aware Wildfire Smoke and Health Workshop. And the workshop was developed based off the content in the guide to help individuals and organizations better understand the connection between wildfire smoke and health. So at ACA, we offer a full suite of air quality services designed to support industry, government, and community partners across our operations, including assessment and public engagement. And these cost recovery services are available at competitive prices for both members and non-members. We offer air quality operations and monitoring services. We're able to design, deploy, and maintain air monitoring systems for air quality measurement, along with meteorological monitoring and data transmission solutions. Our data team can provide air quality assessment and modeling, providing expert guidance and defensible science for permitting, planning, and emergency response. And our communications and engagement team can help make air quality understandable, actionable, and meaningful to your stakeholders. From outdoor event planning to public education and internal training, we try to help bridge the gap between technical air data and real-world decisions. On the screen, you'll see a photo of one of our AQHI cloud lights, which is a tool we use to share information on air quality in public settings. The City of Beaumont has been a member of ACA since 2021, and we absolutely appreciate your continued support. Our municipal members are valued partners and participate as ACA members voluntarily. By working closely with communities, ACA can play an integral role in addressing local air quality concerns. As an ACA member, the City of Beaumont has access to support for effective public engagement on air quality and odor concerns, and membership also provides a cost-effective way to meet environmental responsibilities. The city also has access to our data portal and local air quality monitoring data, which can support informed, evidence-based decision-making. Being part of ACA ensures consistent region-wide messaging about air quality so residents receive the same information across neighboring communities. Through ACA, Beaumont can collaborate with neighboring municipalities and other stakeholders on shared air quality issues and maintain strong connections with regulatory and legislative bodies. Other municipal members include City of Edmonton, Sturgeon County, Leduc, Spruce Grove, Camrose, St. Albert, West Lock County, Strathcona County, and the town of Devon. Right now, Beaumont has one purple air microsensor located on City Hall, operated by ACA. And on our live air data map, you can see the AQHI Plus or AQHI equivalent color reported for this microsensor, calculated using fine particulate matter only. Environment and Climate Change Canada does report an AQHI for the community in the WeatherCan app or website, but it reports actually the City of Edmonton AQHI. So more accurate data is available on our website for residents of the communities in Beaumont. The closest AQHI station would be Lendrum or Sherwood Park. And there's an AeroQual sensor located in Leduc. This is a quick summary of the microsensor data for the City Hall site since 2025. It is a daily or 24-hour average of fine particulate matter, or PM2.5, which is the very fine dust, especially you'll find in wildfire smoke. And we can see some peaks in June and September that correlate with wildfire smoke in the region. And that's it. I just wanted to take today as an opportunity to reintroduce ACA to council and the mayor, and fence any questions, and hopefully just establish a dialogue and relationship going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Colton. Appreciate that presentation. I will open up the floor to council members if they have any questions. I see Councillor Van Newkirk. I'll pass the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the Alberta Quality Health Index a lot in that presentation. Can you just definitively speak to how the data from Beaumont feeds into the rating that is put out there? Because a lot of sports fields, sports teams, you know, I think that's still the go-to, is it, Nathan? Even for soccer, like the AQHI. How does that integrate in?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the mayor to councillor, please. The AQHI number that Beaumont has access to is, of course, generated by continuous monitoring stations located within City of Edmonton boundaries. So it, frankly, is an imperfect system right now, where the AQHI number is not generated from data directly connected within or collected within the community of the City of Beaumont. And that's why we have the purple air microsensor on City Hall. The issue that we run into is the cost to place a station, continuous monitoring station within a geography, but also the availability of land space to put said station on can be really challenging to make that happen. And so the microsensors allow us to kind of fill those gaps in monitoring and provide local data to local communities. But you're correct, the AQHI that the City of Beaumont is receiving is not calculated using any continuous monitoring data for the actual city itself. It's the neighboring region.
Thank you. And you touched on my second question. How much, like in there, the Edmonton Lendrum station is there, and it's got a mural on it, and it's got a razor wire fence around it to keep everybody out, which I'm sure you need. What is that worth? Forget the land to install it, but what does it cost, and who pays for it when another one of them comes online?
Certainly. The station itself ranges in cost, frankly, depending on the sensors inside, but typically is going to be somewhere between, say, $350,000 to $500,000 just for the station and the equipment. And that's not counting the monthly calibrations and the technician labor needed on a yearly basis to support said station. Every station is slightly unique in terms of how it comes online and how it ends up being deployed. In some cases, there are operating contracts based on regulatory requirements. For example, with an industry member that may need a continuous monitoring station next to their operating site, in which case that member will pay the bulk of the cost for that type of station. In other cases, there are gap communities where the government of Alberta has mandated placement of a station, in which case that'll be funded through grants. And other times, just through the natural evolution of private companies perhaps abandoning stations that they once used, we were able to come in and take those over and rehabilitate them and make them into fully operational stations once again, and maybe find better placement for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That being said, I do not see any other councillors with questions. So again, I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Continuing on with our agenda here, we do have 3 other presentations. However, a member of council has requested a quick recess. If there's no objection, I would like to put forward the proposal for a recess for 5 minutes, return here at 6:40. All right, it is 6:41. We are finished our recess here, returning back to our presentations. Next item on the agenda is 6.2, which is offsite levy program. I believe Ms. Raymond and team will present. Perfect. Oh, it's hiding on my screen. Just one sec here.
7. Press it right there.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Trevor Monica, Manager of Long Range Engineering. The purpose of the report tonight is to provide committee with an overview of the city's new offsite levy program guide, which administration has prepared to support consistent implementation of the offsite levy bylaw 1086-25. The requested committee action from tonight is a recommendation to council that the existing council policy C2 offsite levy policy be repealed, and with that recommendation intended to be considered at the upcoming September 8th, 2026 council meeting. Council adopted the current offsite levy bylaw in August of 2025. That bylaw established the city's updated offsite levy framework, including infrastructure categories, projects, calculation methodologies, benefit allocations, levy rates, and annual reporting. At the time the bylaw was adopted, administration advised that additional implementation and guidance was still being developed, and that the existing council policy C2 would remain in effect in the interim. Administration has now completed that implementation work through the new external-facing offsite levy program guide, included as attachment 1 in the report. This report is intended to close that loop on the implementation of the updated OSL program for the bylaw adopted in 2025. The program guide helps developers, applicants, and administration understand in greater detail how the city's offsite levy bylaw is applied and administered. It explains what an offsite levy is, when it applies, how it is assessed and collected, and how front-ending credits, securities, grants, and repayments are administered. The guide is clear in that it must be read together with the offsite levy bylaw, and that if there's any inconsistencies, the city's offsite levy bylaw and the MGA prevail. An important point to note is the guide does not replace the bylaw, amend it in any way, or create new levy obligations. It supports the implementation of the already approved bylaw. The existing offsite levy council policy C2 was approved back in 2014 when Beaumont was operating under the previous offsite levy framework. Policy C2 established administrative processes for levy assessment and collection, deferrals, front-ending, offsets, reimbursement, annual reporting. The city now has its updated bylaw-supported framework through 1086-25, and the program guide is now written specifically to support implementation of the new framework. As noted, the program guide is not intended to be the policy authority for the OSL program. Rather, it's an administrative implementation document. It explains how admin will apply the bylaw on day-to-day subdivision, development permit, development agreement, and repayment processes. Council's role remains intact through the bylaw, annual reporting, annual budgeting and capital planning approval, and any future bylaw amendments. The guide reinforces council's role by noting that certain offset levy projects, including those that require city funding, debt financing, or inclusion in the capital plan and annual budget, must first be approved by council before any approval is granted to execute these projects. Maintaining policy C2 in parallel with the new program guide would create some overlap and potential confusion about which document would guide implementation. Repealing policy C2 reduces the risk of duplicate or outdated administrative direction. As mentioned, the program guide does not establish new levy rates and does not amend the methodology that was approved through the offsite levy bylaw. The levy rates themselves are still governed through Schedule B of the bylaw, and the broader levy framework continues to be governed through the bylaw and the background report. Just on the transparency and engagement piece, the updated offset levy program was developed through substantial engagement with the development community throughout the course of that project, including 6 engagement sessions. And the program guide is building on that work by translating the the OSL framework into a clearer guide for applicants and developers. This guide has been distributed to the development committee and been made available on Beaumont's website for reference. Again, administration is recommending that the committee of the whole recommend to council that council policy C2 offsite levy policy be repealed. And the program guide will then be kept up to date as future amendments to the offsite levy bylaw are approved. Thank you for your time, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Manika, for that presentation. Councillor Van Newkirk, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question on where you actually left off there around the recommendations. Is there any reason that we can't or shouldn't call a special council meeting to get it done before September?
Thank you for that question through to Councillor Van Newkirk. There's no reason like I mentioned, the program guide is now published, available to the community. It's in place and in effect, so the policy can be repealed at any time.
Okay, maybe just looking for further comment from Ledge around the timing of this. And what I'm left wondering is what projects are being contemplated between now and September that might, I don't know, benefit Beaumont from this policy being repealed and, you know, this process being gone through. Is that clear or not clear? Between now and September, what could happen in Beaumont for projects that would be under the old levy system that aren't captured under the new levy system? Is that a thing? Just help me understand that.
Ms. Winter,
Thank you.
Pass
Through
that
the
to you.
Deputy Mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, I couldn't speak to any of those projects. And with the policy not being repealed until September, I wouldn't be able to speak with what that would look like. I'd have to refer to planning and development on that.
Okay, is planning development prepared to comment on that?
Yes, thank you for that. I don't believe there are any projects that are currently occurring that would be impacted by this. Any projects that are happening right now would still fall under the offsite levy bylaw as it currently exists, which is the guiding document, or our bylaw in this case, so there's no concerns from that regard.
Okay, I still have concerns, but I'm hearing no concerns from admin, so yeah, thank you.
thank you, Councillor. That being, Mayor Vanderquack. It's coming.
Just to follow up with that, so the question is whether or not there's any benefit to this passing sooner rather than later. And if this is to implement the actual policy change, right, or the bylaw change, right? The terms of the offsite levies?
So, thank you for the question through the mayor, or through to Mayor Vanderquack. The current bylaw is not being amended through the program guide. The guide is just a clarification on administrative procedures, and the policy is largely the same in that respect, but it has a few inconsistencies with the new bylaw. So the recommendation to repeal that is to eliminate the confusion between the 2014 policy and the 2025 bylaw. The program guide takes that place, but outside of a council policy.
And so there's been sufficient time communicated to those who would be affected by this to know that there's changes happening?
Yes, that's correct, and there is largely no change that, like, materially is occurring. The current bylaw as adopted in 2025 is the governing bylaw, so any inconsistencies would be referred back to that bylaw. So, in effect, there is no change.
Okay, so there's no detriment to waiting until September is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess I'll just repeat that. I think my understanding of it, obviously bylaws in effect, that takes precedence along with MGA. So this is more an administrative change than it is a change that'll take effect to anyone developing or making any changes in that sense.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect. Thank you. Quick question for administration or the clerk. Just am I required to put a motion forward to take this report as information, or am I able to proceed to the next presentation?
We have a motion ready to go if you just give me a moment.
Perfect. Thank you. And Councillor Penrod, are you speaking to the motion?
Just have a question on this.
Okay, perfect. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Before I get to my question, just want to note in the bylaw, as published, there is a small typo under the WAT-30 project, the WAT 30 project. It looks like it's just a simple error. The start year and end year look like they're reversed there, but since it's in the bylaw, that we should probably address that. And I think because it's just kind of a correction of a typo, it wouldn't require a motion or a resolution or anything like that, but just wanted to raise that. In the background report from Urban Systems, page 56 through 152 of the package tonight, they talk about the modeling for how the offsite levy rates were calculated. And they specifically reference some of the density targets for administration. If in future statutory plans Beaumont embraces lower density targets, what's the likelihood our offsite levy rates would need to be adjusted downward as a result?
Through to Councillor Penrod, thank you for that question. It is difficult to speak to exactly what would happen to the levy rates if the density targets were adjusted. Likely, though, you would find through the modeling is that because land consumption would increase corresponding to a reduced density target, there would be a change to levy rates. Again, it would depend on all other factors staying exactly the same, which they would not. In any sort of future scenario. So beyond that, it's hard to speak to whether they would go up or down.
Okay, and I think that's all that I had on this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a member of council willing to put forward this motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'll make the motion. Thank you, Chair. I'll make the motion that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to be considered at the September 8th, 2026 Council meeting that Council Policy C2 offsite levy policy be repealed.
Thank you. And councillors, if we could put our votes forward. And that carries unanimously at 6-0. Perfect. Next matter of business is a presentation on facility rental policy. Correct me if I'm wrong here. My apologies. Mr. Percival and Mr. Suter, I believe, are presenting.
Yeah, I will be. It's Percival, close.
Percival.
You got it, yeah.
My apologies.
Good enough, yeah.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. Paul Suter, Director of Community Services. Administration is here this evening with committee to have a conversation on a draft facility rental policy. And this was something administration committed to council to bring back this year. Basically stemming from a couple, or more than a couple inquiries on some decisions made on some rentals in the past. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for a presentation to Sean Percival, the manager of Rec Facilities. Facility rentals falls within his portfolio, so I'll turn over to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As Paul mentioned, my name is Sean Percival. I'm the manager of Recreation Facilities. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me the opportunity to present a proposed facility rental policy for the city of Beaumont. We'll start this evening off just by discussing some background of how we got here. We'll show a regional scan we completed in looking at what other municipalities are doing for rental policies. some rationale around why we believe this policy is needed, and finally, we will address next steps beyond this meeting. So back in January 2026, in response to both community and administrative needs, administration began looking into establishing parameters and principles that would govern how we rent our spaces to the public. While many of our areas have operational procedures for how they rent space, these procedures do not have any strategic alignment with guiding principles from either a city directive or a city policy. Our goals in this proposed policy include consistency in how the city rents its spaces, alignment of all procedures with a set of guiding principles, and direction in how the city's bookable spaces are governed. So a bit about why we feel we need this policy, or believe we need this policy. The establishment of a facility rental policy would provide strategic direction in how we manage and govern the rentals of our spaces, support the development and review of all of our current procedures to ensure alignment with each other and those guiding principles, and ensure a fair and unbiased approach to the rental of bookable spaces across the city. Additionally, it would provide clarity and transparency in our decision-making processes for rentals, both approvals and denials, as well as acting as a risk mitigation tool, as staff can refer back to the policy in the operational decisions that are made for rentals. In the absence of a policy, administration will continue to work on better overall alignment of the procedures we have in place, as well as continuing to work collaboratively between branches and departments in our decision-making around facility rentals. However, without that connection to a larger set of guiding principles, it may result in a more subjective approach and outcomes to how we close gaps and find alignments. So part of the approach that was taken was to conduct a regional scan to see what other municipalities are doing or what they have in place to help guide facility rentals. As you can see, some of the communities on the slide in front of you have some form of guiding principles, such as allocation or cost recovery targets. However, many have no guiding principles that provide staff direction or support on operational procedure development, and only 2 of the community's policies speak to any specific or unique subject matter. This policy being proposed would itself provide guiding principles for staff to use in their operational development and would reference applicable city policies and bylaws, as well as provincial and federal legislation to support the types of rentals we allow in our facilities. So beyond this, if the committee recommends this proposed policy to council and council approves the policy, this will initiate work in bringing department stakeholders to the table to complete a full review of all existing procedures to ensure alignment with the policy, which we anticipate would begin in Q4 of 2026. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Perfect. Thank you for the presentation. Councillor Penrod, you are up first.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate you bringing this forward. I know we've had some conversation in the past year or so just around that kind of scattershot approach on decisions, and appreciate the effort here that's gone into creating a process that's a bit more robust and transparent for folks to know where they stand in this regard. I appreciated I had some questions that were answered just by the inclusion of the definition, so I just wanted to highlight that kind of continuous improvement element as we're developing these policies and renewing them into that kind of template for how Beaumont does all of this work. I think that's well received, and it makes it easier to read these documents for the public too. So just wanted to highlight and give thanks for that. Questions in 3.2 under exclusions, page 143 of the package. Excluded are any other groups, activities, or uses as deemed necessary to carry out the administrative duties of the city. It feels like a pretty broad exclusion point. I wonder if you could speak to the necessity to have it so broad.
Sure, I'll kick it off through the chair to Councillor Penrod. That bullet is, by its design, intended to be somewhat overarching and subjective. If the city or the CAO's office or council were to determine a certain activity to be of necessity to the city's operations, that could be excluded from the guiding principles within the policy. It's listed, it might be more applicable to emergency management use, but if the city had to activate a facility for an emergency evacuation center on a whim, that might be something that could fit into that bullet. But again, it was sort of by design to allow that flexibility for the city manager or council to make those types of decisions if they deemed necessary.
Yeah, appreciate it. So the way it comes through is it's actually an exclusion that helps the city slot in things that are in the city's best interest. It's not an exclusion that would be used against the group that's trying to secure space from the broader community.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. And item 5.4 under rental refusal, it says administration may deny a request, and it goes on, but it lists for grounds for potentially denying a request, activities that are prohibited under provincial or federal legislation. I wonder if may is the right word there, if it's strong enough. Would we as council want administration to grant a request that's prohibited under provincial legislation? I just wondered if stronger language might be used there. That would be my feedback.
Okay, appreciate that, yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Mayor Vanderkwak.
Thank you, Chair. All right, so I have a few things. First of all, I think the policy is very concise, what you've written here. Principle-based, deliberately avoids listing controversial groups or viewpoints, but there are some things that I do have some questions about that I think from a governance perspective, and one of them is that there seems to be some broad allowance for subjectivity and discretion. For example, in the word public interest, you know, the phrase that is in the statement says rentals must be fair, equitable, and safe, which is great. Then it adds in the public interest. And this kind of dovetails into my second point. But who defines what public interest is? You know, I'm wondering if there's something else we could use here that could be a little bit more objective, because public interest means different things to different people. So can administration explain that to someone? Can that be objectively measured so that different staff members, for example, who are making that decision consistently reach the same decision? That's kind of where it comes down to a little bit more of a problem. And the other one is, it goes into the second, was it contravenes the principles of this policy, referring to the same one Councillor Penrod was talking about there, whereas this being part of that principle of the policy, whether it's within the public interest, then it becomes problematic, becomes now like a circular test. So those things really jumped out at me there as far as there's a lot of discretion in that, and I think we need to have a little bit less discretion and things that are a little bit more objectively defined so that anybody who's in that position can make the same decision and it's going to be consistent. So those are a few, and I'll come back around when I have more time.
Perfect, thank you. Any response from administration or just noted? Okay.
So through the chair to Mayor Vanderkwak, appreciate the comments. Certainly something that can be taken into consideration. For frontline staff that take the rental requests, that review them, that contact the prospective renters, the idea is that it would be an application of the guiding principles of this policy that would be used to measure whether to approve or deny a rental, which would include all listed and applicable city policies, bylaws, federal and provincial legislation. So to circle back to the potential subjectivity around public interest, I can appreciate that comment, given the fact that frontline staff would, should this policy be approved and operational documents were to be reviewed and created, et cetera, it would be a pretty specific list of questions that staff would likely get that would be applicable only to those guiding principles and the relevant documents that I listed before. So something to take back for us is to potentially consider changing the word public interest and having it be more defined as the public interest is that we are ensuring that we are only using this policy and applicable legislation and other bylaws to approve or deny a rental request. That action itself would be in the best public interest.
Thank you for the response. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you to the Mayor for raising that, because one of the questions I brought forward tonight to ask was, does this policy lend itself to different staff members all coming to the same decision using the policy? So that's been covered now. I wanted to focus on 5.4 a second, if you wouldn't mind scrolling to that. I'm going to propose adding a bullet point. Now, one of the criteria that I wondered about is a review of previous rental stewardship to an applicant or an applicant group, as in last time, what happened? You know, last time your group or you rented, bylaw came 3 times, we had to call the cops, and there was all this stuff, right? I don't know that I'm confident there would be some, knowledge of that within administration, but documented relative to that group's rental of the facility, I don't know how that would work internally. So one of the things I contemplated was adding a bullet point that would say something like, so it says administration may deny a request if administration determines that the intended rental use documented prior non-compliance with rental terms or city policies, as in property damage, non-payment, bylaw contraventions, within the last 24 months, like within some kind of period. So just trying to add the contemplation of what happened last time you rented our facility. Does that sound reasonable?
It does, yeah. So through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, I would maybe recommend to your recommendation that this type of, to use your term, non-compliance in previous rentals might find itself maybe better served in the operational processes that administration takes. So rather than council identifying specifically anecdotal examples of non-compliance in rentals that occur in our facilities, that we instead look at ensuring that the way that we operate the administration of rentals includes some penalty or some kind of acknowledgement that we may look at previous rentals as far as whether to deny them or not based on previous experiences. And I suppose, to be blunt, there's a number of different reasons why a group may be denied rental opportunities, including things like previous damage to the facility or otherwise. So I may have to defer over to Paul, but I would say my initial response is it's the right idea. I just wonder if it may better fit into the way we operationalize the policy as opposed to the policy itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think my overall goal would be in the process of reviewing a policy or going to rent a facility, that it be clear to the user group that consideration would pop up somewhere. That's my goal, right?
Right, yeah, understood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cole-Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, I had similar concerns just about the consistency of the application, given the broad authority to determine appropriate use. So some of the things discussed already to tighten that up. The other one was, I think it was 5.3. The city may request risk mitigation measures to be instituted by the user. I'm wondering if we could include something where those risk mitigation requirements be based on like a documented objective for evidence-based policy, and maybe like a checklist of things that were validated or evaluated. And if at all possible, I know it's a tall ask, some definitions around like the safety risk, operational risk, and community risk.
So through the chair to Councillor Colesmith. So the intention behind this particular section is to provide prospective rental users with an understanding that if we believe that based on the unique nature of their rental request, there may be additional measures that the city has to take to ensure that we can make their rental safe for themselves, other public in the facility, and staff, that cost may fall onto them. Certainly to take away a definition around safety, I would caution that because there are, especially at the community center, there are so many different types of unique rentals that come through here, it would be fairly daunting to include that level of specificity. However, to borrow a phrase, to tighten up that definition of safety, just to give even a higher arching statement to say, safety is what we determine based on the unique nature of the rental request that we receive. There may be ... So certainly that is one thing that I think we could probably look to do in the definition section.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So just kind of continuing the thread of possible additions, but rather than go forward with that, I just want to ask, kind of following your response to some of the other questions, how will this policy help you to do the work to operationalize how you think about how an individual proposed rental group impacts the use of other user groups that are also in the building? Most of these buildings are multi-use, right? Do you want to speak to that? Is that something that belongs more in the policy, more in the operational guide?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, my initial response to that would be it likely fits better into the operationalization of the policy. So if, for example, we would be able, from this policy and the associated documents that I've referred to a few times already, we would be able to better equip our staff to understand where to place certain requests that come in. So a cultural event that wants to take place at the rec center, but they are expecting 300 people, well, we know they can't go there, so we would be able to fit them into a very specific space at a different facility. In terms of groups that may conflict with one another within the same structure, I would see that as something that would be a part of a review of when staff take requests. Currently, they already look at what else is occurring in the building, and it's unlikely to change through a review, provided this policy were to be approved by council. But I would see that falling actually under the 5.3 bullet for safety, is that would be a part of what our staff would do to determine the safety of the rental for the sake of the renters, the staff, and other individuals that are in the facility, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. And just to follow on in that conversation, I guess part of how I interpret some of the questions that are coming your way is, I think we want the policy to do the policy things and the administrative operational guides to do what they do. The tension in the community, though, the reason that we're here is because we've had some rental groups kind of question on what basis have we been denied or given certain qualifications to follow or whatever. And so I just wonder how transparent those operational guides are to potential renters. And are we doing you any favors by having them kind of on the administrative side of things? Would there be benefit in having some of that outlined in the policy so that as a person is preparing their documents to propose a rental, they're able to see the criteria that this is based on?
Sure. So through the chair to Councillor Penrod, I would say, I'll try to answer your second question first. Provided the policy is approved and we move forward with the full comprehensive review of our operational documentation and procedures, One consideration that we can take in during that review would be to include the policy in any rental request documentation that we put out. So rather than having the operational documents referred to in the principal or attached, we'd try to flip it and actually have the policy referenced in any rental applications that a prospective renter would fill out. And we can ensure to highlight that so it's not buried in some footnote or secondary attachment. And that way a person who is interested in renting a space in one of our facilities could be driven right to the policy to see exactly what the city is setting out as its guiding principles and its sort of approval process in that regard. Would you mind repeating your first question? I'm not sure if I remember it.
Sure, I guess what it comes back to is, would it be helpful to have as part of the guiding principles just an acknowledgement that these are multi-use spaces and that part of the metric for deciding if your rental can go forward or not is who else is there and how compatible your uses are? I'm not sure what you call that exactly, but that's feedback I'm giving you today.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think that's good feedback to take into consideration. Well, actually, quite frankly, regardless of whether this policy is approved, it's still something we can take back and put into consideration. And remembering a piece of your first question from the first time you asked it, yes, you are doing us a favor, in my opinion, and I suppose I'm speaking on behalf of the city in this role. This is something that is favorable to administration. This is, the short answer is that's why we did it, right? The long answer is this provides so much less subjectivity around approvals and denials. The challenges that have been faced in the previous few years, and in particular this year as well, is that certain decisions were made using subjective approaches to approvals or denials. This provides us a risk mitigation tool in approaching the rationale behind whether we reject a rental or we approve it. If in its current form, if we reject it, we base it on this is what we've been doing the last few years. Whereas now, if we were to have to reject a renter, it would be something we would lean back on in this policy as well as applicable documentation. And again, just to be very blunt as well, our goal is to rent to as many people as possible, and at all costs to have every space we have available to be rented. We're not looking to put a lot of boundaries or barriers or red tape in place for prospective renters. We just want to ensure that we have applicable guiding principles that will protect the city, protect the staff, et cetera. And again, it's to try to drive in as many renters as possible. So.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. You had mentioned that we've experienced quite a few challenges, we being obviously the city. Are you able to speak to some of those challenges? Because obviously we're not privy to necessarily some of the details. It doesn't need to be super specific, but just so we have a general understanding.
Sure. So through the chair to the chair, I would say, to be a little bit high level, and not to excuse myself completely, but I've been in the role for 6 months. So what I've seen so far is that in some cases, there are decisions made to, say, refuse a rental based on a similar rental that may have been refused 18 months ago, but we don't have maybe any documentation to support the rationale from 18 months ago. It's just someone remembered that 18 months ago we refused a similar rental. We also have, again, challenges with, people that may feel like a similar rental to the one that they were refused was allowed access. And so that seems unfair, and that very, very well may be. However, at this point, the way that we approach rentals is a bit too administrative and without guiding principles to really kind of help guide us to that end result of whether to approve or deny a rental. So if that answers your question.
Perfect. Thank you. Mayor Vanderkwak.
Thank you. Just gonna get my reset here. Thank you so much. So I am going to just circle back around to the fact that the draft policy, there seems to be a bit of a contradiction between the report and the draft policy. The draft policy never mentions petitions. but the report spends considerable time discussing petitions and previous practices. So my question is, are you asking council to approve a policy that removes petition restriction, or is administration intending to continue that practice through this operating procedures?
So through the chair to Mayor Vanderquack. So petitions are listed in the report as an example of kind of what brought us here today. It wasn't to explicitly request support to reject or deny petitions. The policy doesn't list any specific subject matter because, well, frankly, the policy might be 150 pages long if we listed every single potential subject matter in a rental that was being requested. We are not asking for council specifically to allow or to deny petitions. If a person hypothetically wanted to book a space in a facility to run a petition, provided they meet all the guiding principle checkboxes in the policy, as well as applicable other city policies, bylaws, and federal provincial legislation, they're in. As far as we're concerned, that would be fine with us. If that answers your question about that.
Yeah, it does. So I would want to know what those other regulations are that might restrict them, because my concern is, so I got to get my timer going here. My concern is this whole thing of fairness. How is fairness measured? And I actually like some of the descriptions that are in the jurisdictional scan that you provided. Spruce Grove and Edmonton, for example, had a really good description, which I think personally that it would be really great for our policy to have as a principle, and specifically supports democratic values, freedom of choice, fair treatment, and I don't believe, as a municipality, that we can dictate the content of which someone is putting on an event as long as it doesn't violate certain things, But at the same time, if we could have it more conduct related in terms of they're abiding, they're peaceful, they're safe, all those things, then I think that would create a more fair and equitable, because it comes down to why was one denied and why was one allowed. If it was conduct-based as opposed to content-based, that to me would be more along the lines of promoting free and open access and process. So maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Vanderquack. There is nothing within this policy that would dictate to staff building operational documents to scrutinize any of the subject matter that a renter is bringing forward, with the exception of any operational processes that we bring in to ensure that they're not violating another city policy, bylaw, federal, provincial legislation. So I can't speak to the specific nature of a rental request until we receive it. That is just the honest answer. So if someone were to want to carry out a rental, and again, they met the guiding principles as they're written in the policy, they don't violate any bylaw or policy already in place, and they don't violate, on paper at least, through the request, any provincial or federal legislation, as I mentioned before, we would approve their rental. So the goal of this is by no means to have staff get into the business of scrutinizing the subject matter. It would simply be, do they violate any of these documents, yes or no? If it's a no, then we carry forward with the request, 100%. We would, and again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse because we haven't operationalized this, but we would always, in my experience, we would build in safeguards to ensure there's an escalation process at any time that a staff member who's taking a request may have questions or may not be certain. And it's possible that when we get to the operationalization of this policy and its principles, et cetera, that there may be opportunity for us to review denials before the denial is sent back to the renter, the prospective renter, excuse me. So again, I guess to summarize that, it would be, we're simply looking to see if they violate one of the principles or any of the applicable documents within the policy. That's it.
Thank you for that. So I would like to propose that we have something in there, like a principle, like as is in Spruce Grove or Edmonton, where the city recognizes the public facilities exist to serve a diverse community with different beliefs, values, viewpoints, and that rental decisions can be administered in a lawful, viewpoint neutral, politically neutral manner, and shall not be based on agreement or disagreement with ideas, opinions, or beliefs of a user. That's my recommendation.
Appreciate that, and I see no reason why we can't include something like that for sure.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Looks like we have one last request here. Councillor Van Newkirk, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I was done, but then Mayor brought something up that made me think about rentals underway. So the questions I asked to begin with is like looking for criteria to potentially refuse a rental up front, right, with the suggestion I made. At a policy level, how can we in this policy also address the fact that conditions can change after a rental has begun? As in, you rent to do a thing, everybody shows up to do that thing, it's way more people than you expected, it's disrupting active users, it's disrupting the community, it's disrupting everyone around. Does the city have, how can this policy protect the users around that facility? Do we need to put a statement in here, we can cancel a rental at any time? Like operationally, I know you're gonna have that, but does this policy need to have that as well?
So through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, I would say to address the examples that you brought forward, I would refer back to the 5.3 section around safety of the rental. That would be applicable on a preventative measure, and it would also be something to be incorporated into the operationalization of the rental itself. So, for example, in the current form, we have staff that work at the facilities that monitor the rentals, and in doing so, if staff believe or feel as though a rental has, I'll just say, gotten out of hand, for lack of a better term, there are processes in place right now that staff take to address that, whether it's calling our CMP, whether it's contacting the supervisor, whatever the case may be. So I would say that this policy, and specifically the guiding principle around safety, would help, I'll say, beef up the operationalization of how staff can address rentals that have already started, as opposed to it just being before they start, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense for sure. It's easier to add this language now than when something's than when something or someone is in front of us. And fire code definitely is, the safety piece that governs the people inside the building. But I'm thinking more about who shows up outside, how many vehicles, huge lineups of people, and we've seen a lot of examples in that lately. And I don't know when it'll pop up next, but it will. And at some point, we're going to be dealing with that, and then it'll be disrupting members of the community, other facility users, as you've said before, right? So anyways, if there's an opportunity to, at a policy level, strengthen anything, I think you should take that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I echo my fellow councillors' comments there, especially on things such as previous behavior and some of the things that we've seen, as Councillor Van Newkirk had mentioned, too many folks potentially too loud, not controlling the original agreement. So something along those lines, and just, you never want to go to the enforcement side, but just knowing that there's an out should you need it if it's disruptive to general users within the facility. Perfect. I will go to administration just to see if we are needing a motion for this one. No, perfect. That being said, we will proceed on to business item 6.4, level of service, roads and parks policy, and I believe Bryce, you're going to be presenting that. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Members of Council, this policy update translates your 2026-2030 strategic plan into everyday action on our roads and in our parks. It gives residents full transparency into what we do, how we do it, and how we manage growth together. To set context, this update directly supports Council's 26-30 strategic plan, specifically our commitment to delivering resident-centred services. It's important to emphasise that this policy update doesn't reinvent the wheel. It is a new and improved method of communicating our existing service levels clearly to both Council and the public. By expanding from a narrow winter focus to a comprehensive year-round model in both parks and roads, we're establishing realistic operational targets while setting clear expectations. One moment. Okay. Technical difficulties. Can you go to 2? Scope, definitions, and foundation principles. So structural improvements have been made to improve clarity and accountability. A new scope and application section confirms that the policy applies to both city staff and external contractors. Definitions have been moved to Schedule 1, with new terms added for parks and outdoor amenities such as sports fields, playgrounds, and outdoor rinks. Under the strategic plan pillar of growth that makes sense for Beaumont, our foundational principles now explicitly address how operational demands scale as our community grows. We are grounding our standard operations in a 40-hour service week with emergency response triggers, ensuring that we remain fiscally responsible and tied to annual budget approvals. Winter maintenance remains a core focus, with road priorities streamlined from 5 categories down to 4. Local roads are now more clearly distinguished between connecting residential roads and lower volume local streets, cul-de-sacs, alleys, and gravel roads. Quadrant-based service delivery has been clarified. Once priority 1 and 2 areas are addressed, clues will be deployed by quadrant. The policy now explains how service timelines reset during back-to-back snow events, making expectations clearer during extended weather events. Sidewalk and trail maintenance is scheduled Monday to Friday, with after hours or weekend snowfall addressed on the next business day. City building entrances, the language has been cleared up. The city building entrances must be cleared within 2 hours of openings. Parking lot clearing thresholds have been tightened from the previous 5 to 10 centimetre range down to a flat and hard 5 centimetre target. Snow storage language will allow temporary storage during extreme weather. Parking ban enforcements now refer to the traffic safety bylaw. Clear service levels have been established for year-round maintenance tasks in both parks and roads. This includes sweeping of streets, sidewalks and trails, grass cutting, trimming, stormwater facility mowing, and upkeep of sports fields and ball diamonds. The policy formalizes service frequencies for garbage collection, porta potties and bathroom maintenance, playground inspections, hard surface maintenance, and outdoor rink inspections. A new section formalizes the use of contractors for specialized, seasonal, or surge capacity work, including support during winters with above average snowfall. Annual policy reviews will occur during budget deliberations to ensure service levels remain aligned with available funding. This slide represents the biggest win for our residents and aligns directly with Council's strategic commitment about modern communication. Again, this policy is not about improving. This policy is ultimately about how we communicate. Instead of residents guessing when a trail is swept or a road is cleared, everything will be hosted in one clear central location on the city's website. Residents will have access to current service levels, interactive maps, property owner responsibilities, and real-time seasonal updates for outdoor spaces. Finally, as Beaumont continues to expand, this policy ensures that our growth is deliberate and transparent. Every year, during budget deliberations, Council will receive supporting documents and clear cost service implications for any proposed service level increases or new developments coming online. This will ensure full strategic oversight before new operational commitments are made. To wrap up, members of Council, when you introduce the new strategic plan, you set a clear mandate for resident-centred services and growth that makes sense for Beaumont. What we've brought you today isn't just an administrative update, it's an operational translation of your vision. By replacing outdated single-season policies with comprehensive year-round framework, administration is carrying out the direction that you set for public, transparent communication, clear accountability, and prudent financial oversight. We are excited to get this modernized communication live on our website so our residents can see the full value of the services that Council fund every day. Thank you for your time, and I would be happy to answer any of your questions and listen to your feedback.
Perfect. Thank you, Bryce, for that presentation. If this policy is a representation of some of the efforts we've seen put forward so far, I'm impressed with this policy. I don't know if we hit the lotto in terms of some good employees, because we've definitely seen a lot of hard work and effort put into a department that always has to show what they can do and make the citizens happy. So great work to you and the team. I just want to note that. In terms of questions, I do see Councillor Cole-Smith, so we will start with you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, no, I really like the policy. Just had a couple of questions. In C, grass cutting, it talks about the naturalization below the 1 in 5 year flood line. Can you just explain what that means? I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yep. Through the chair to Councillor Cole-Smith. Naturalization below the 1 in 5 year floodline relates specifically to the stormwater management facilities. The 1 in 5 year floodline says that in any given year, there's 20% chance that through the recent rains, that's where the water level will get to. So I'm sure we've seen recently that the stormwater facilities, the water level can rise, and the naturalization within that boundary helps with soil retention, soil erosion. We plant some wet tolerant species within that area, and with naturalization, it's a clear message to the residents of where the water level can get to 20% of the time when it rains.
So after this most recent rain, that line is now higher. Okay. I noticed the outdoor facilities would be, their status would be updated on the website. Does that include the timestamp, like each day? That's excellent.
Through the chair to Councillor Cole-Smith, yes, we heard that from the residents and council loud and clear this year that our messaging behind when sports fields are open and the posting on the website could be improved, and that is a part of it. So timestamps, day stamps, as well as providing that information to the guest services representatives at the BSRC, so any user groups can call and get confirmation after hours when, say, we're not in the office. They can get confirmation of what fields are open, what are user discretion, and what are closed.
That's really good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. I guess I'll stay on the naturalization piece. I caught that as well. I'll say before that in our documentation, naturalization has actually never been defined before, so that is something that, will need to be contemplated as we move back. I would also say that naturalization has become the enemy because naturalization was all the way up to the edge of the sidewalk. Right? So this is right here saying naturalization is to the 1 in 5 year flood line. It isn't to the edge of the sidewalk, right? So there's some definition on that. So I think that's important and good, and we can watch to see how that is working. I would challenge that naturalization of vegetation does benefit from periodic mowing as well to elongate widen root structures, so blindly seeding and growing and then not managing that naturalized vegetation from time to time actually isn't the way to go. So there's an operational piece there that should be considered. Secondarily, this will be my annual plug. Can you go to page 183 of 216? It was the presentation on the map there around communication. And while you're going there, being mindful of my time, I'll just say that annually concerns come into the city where in areas where servicing is yet to be turned over to the city or the city isn't responsible. This is my annual plug for some mapping to show that. That top bullet point there, I think there's an opportunity to have a map layer that says the city is responsible for all this and it's in a color. And the city isn't responsible for this and it's in a color, as in commercial nodes, condominium complexes, areas that the developer is responsible for still and hasn't been turned over to the city. I think there should be a visual representation of that that folks can be directed to as part of the SEO responses to people. That visual aid is going to help a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it. Mayor Vanderklag.
Thank you. Thank you, Bryce, for this. And yes, really happy with what's going on in our Parks and Rec right now. And so one thing that stuck out to me is I'm going to talk about it from, again, a governance document that what you said earlier, I think would be a great piece to put in here as far as the purpose of this policy is to establish clear, measurable, transparent service level expectations for residents, guide administration delivery of roads, park services, and provide council with a framework for oversight, resource allocation, and continuous improvement. I think having a why statement is really important in that document as a governance. The other thing I wanted to mention is the word, and I understand it from a legal perspective, but I'm wondering how we measure it when in the document talks about the city will make reasonable efforts. So how will council know whether administration is consistently achieving their targets if they describe it as reasonable efforts?
Through the chair to Mayor Van der Kwak. Reasonable efforts is something that's pulled directly out of the MGA with a lot of infrastructure maintenance.
Okay.
So that's a very set standard that the city will make reasonable efforts to keep infrastructure in appropriate maintainable conditions. So reasonable efforts is a vague statement that allows the city to be in alignment with what's operationally possible, because we can repair anything given the appropriate amount of money, but when budget is set and we're working with a set funding timeline, that it may not be reasonable to repair a sports field that someone drove a tractor through and ripped up a big trench in it. So we will make reasonable efforts to maintain and repair everything within our operational boundaries.
Maybe a kind of an explainer like that might be helpful.
Okay.
That would I'm just thinking of someone reading this policy, the question will be, well, what does that look like? But what you just said there brings it into scope, right, within context of that. So that's something. Let me just go back over here. Gotta go back. The other thing, I love the quadrant. I love the fact that you're doing a rotational in terms of the services. I think that's really great. Will that be communicated as to year by year, which quadrant is beginning and which you're starting at?
Through the
week
chair
by week,
to-
whatever timing is, yeah.
Yep. Through the chair to Mayor Van der Kwak. Yes. So that's something we've already done, and we already do it. We've been doing it for nearly a decade. It's just we haven't been good at communicating that to the public.
Okay.
So, for example, street sweeping, we sweep by quadrants, and we change which quadrant starts the process every year. So the northwest quadrant one year, then northeast and southeast and southwest. So the intent is to give each and every resident equal service. So street sweeping, pothole patching, snow removal, we work on a quadrant-based system with alternating quadrants every year. So at the moment, it's a 4-year cycle. As we continue to build out, that'll change. But yes, we will communicate that, and that is one of the things that will be on this centralized location on the website.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think, communication is really key for that, so people understand kind of the rotation of that. The other thing is, I don't have it in my notes here, but about the reporting back, I think there was an annual report. Will that also report include maybe stats? I know that I just visited the SEO Center today, was quite impressed with all that's going on there. But will that include data collection in terms of maybe improvements in a certain area or less complaints in a certain area?
Through the chair to Mayor Van der Kwak. We provide a quarterly report corporately to council, and we're looking to fill that out with as much stats as possible. So recently, GPS has been installed in most of our vehicles, which gives us increased data and reporting. Our goal is that quarterly reporting that you receive to build out as much as humanly possible.
Awesome. Yeah, just for continuous improvement, I think that's really important. Thank you so much. I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate this policy coming forward. One of the things I zeroed in on right away was the proposed annual review, and then meshing that in with the budgeting process. I think that's excellent and gives us a chance to really have those conversations about service tweaks very intentionally, as opposed to sometimes it can feel like it's a throw-in at the end of a budget session. I just wonder if you could speak more to when that would come up, so that, because the way I would imagine this happening is there'll be some questions about current service levels that will require some reporting or a bit of preparation to come back to the budget workshop in the fall. So have you done some thinking around when this would be calendarized so that we can have those preliminary conversations? Or does it tie into your earlier point to those quarterly reporting?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, it would tie into the quarterly reporting. There is nothing stopping council at any point from letting us know what you would like to see in service levels, especially when it comes to this policy. Before this policy, it's been service maps at the end of a budget, so service level has been tied to the budgetary approval has been tied to service. This gives you a chance throughout the year to look at what we're doing, see how we're performing, and make recommendations on what you would like to see the following year.
Okay, just a couple of quick hit pieces. We talked about the quadrants already, and that's been a piece that's in practice. Something that's been unclear to me is there's a couple different services that run on the quadrant system. Are they staggered, or does all the services start in quadrant 1 in year 1? Or are we saying like snow removal starts quadrant 1 and street sweeping starts in quadrant 3, so that one community isn't last on everything in a given year? Does that make sense?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, yes, we alternate every single service. So snow removal, pothole patching, crack sealing, and street sweeping, they alternate. So not one community or not one section of the city is last every single year, as well as every 4 years, you're not first every year. So for equitable treatment, we alternate every single service.
Yeah, sorry, I might not have been clear. What I'm trying to ask is, are they staggered? So is everything on 1 beginning in 1 this year? And then 2, 3, 4?
Yeah.
Or are some services starting in 1 while others are starting in 3?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, maybe I wasn't clear. For example, this year, 2026, snow removal will be northwest quadrant, but then street sweeping will be northeast quadrant. Then it'll be pothole patching southeast quadrant. Yep, we make every effort to make sure there's equitable treatment across every single community, every single residential area within our community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next on the list is Councillor Hyde.
Yeah, thank you. Brace, just looking at the naturalization areas and such like that, I'm wondering, there's nothing in here that talks about noxious weeds within that as well. I'm talking about like Canada thistle, foxtail, leafy spurs, blue weed, hound's tongue, all that kind of stuff that it must be controlled within Alberta. It's not in here at all. Is there some other place where this would be for noxious weeds?
Through the chair to Councillor Hyde, yes, that's in the Alberta Weed Act. So that's a provincial legislation. We have to abide by that. Canada thistle, tansy, if it's noticed on our property, we have 48 hours to control. So in an effort not to double up what the province is already doing, it's very explicitly covered under the Alberta Weed Act.
Okay, so is there anywhere that can refer to that within this documentation?
Through the chair to Councillor Hyde, I can take that away and see if we can add it in. Again, I didn't see the need to double up when the province specifically states what the requirements are. Yeah, we as a city are held to the exact same standard as residents are held for their own properties.
Yeah, understandable, and I appreciate that. But we do get a lot of people that send in complaints saying about some noxious weeds that are around some of the naturalization areas and in the ditches and those type of places as well, which are in our jurisdiction. So if it was somehow there that they can take a look at it, that just makes it easier for us to say, well, don't go to a different spot, it's right there. That's all I'm referring to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to go back to 5A, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down. Just wondering if you could speak to 5A. So some of the feedback that council gets is, very black and white. Everybody goes home on the weekend and doesn't care about the trails, right? Not true. So can you speak to how a 40-hour week might look at different times of the year? Is everyone Monday to Friday, or is there people that are, Thursday to whatever, that different 5-day periods? Are there shifts in schedules? How is some of that managed? I know with bylaw, for instance, shifts are managed and worked around events and times of year and all those kinds of things. Can you speak to some of the Parks and Rec staff and what that scheduling looks like? I think the public should hear some of that.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, the Parks and Roads teams are grounded in a 40-hour work week, so from 8 to 4:30 Monday to Friday. The reason that is the roads team, they have 6 staff. We need 6 staff for snow removal. We need 6 staff for adequate pothole patching and traffic control. So there is a need of the whole team to be together. Historically, we have considered what it would look like for 7-day coverage, and what that looks like is suboptimal crew numbers and resourcing to get the job done during the week, and we weren't able to achieve the same amount of work. This does allow us to get the most amount of work done during the 40-hour work week. However, we do have an on-call system. There is an individual on call from both Parks and Roads, and they are available 24/7, and that nothing will be allowed to go outside of that service level. For example, in the winter, if we have a big snow on the Saturday morning, this 40-hour work week does not mean that the plows and the sanders are not out Saturday morning at 5 a.m. We have on-call staff appropriate for the season. Say at Christmas, there's more than one. And that if we see conditions where we need to respond, we will respond 24/7. But the grounding of the team is within the 40-hour work week. With our current complement of staff, that is our limitation. However, we have set out the pathway to get to, say, 7-day coverage, but that does involve a increased level of service, which involves personnel and resourcing.
Yeah, that's good. I think the clarity there is that the on-call system is what the tool is right now to make sure that if there are large concerns, mostly on trail snow clearing, that's a lot of the feedback we get back. On weekends, some of the key areas are looked after. So I know that I've definitely saw some of the trail machines clearing trails on weekends, and it's not that they're pulling in full shifts on that, but some of the key areas are looked after. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So on page 159, the document says the snow and ice control program will reset when continuous snow events are experienced. This is the single biggest pinch in the current system. I wonder if you could take the opportunity, given your response to the last question. I think this is a great opportunity to just hear why this is the best of the worst options, if that makes sense. If you could speak to how this helps us to achieve that community safety and well-being and the resident-centered services.
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, thank you for that question. That's probably the most misunderstood part of our service levels, is the roads operational in winter. The quadrant policy is specifically around the sentence of if snow comes again, that we reset the service levels until they can be brought back into a line. So realistically, what does that mean? So we do priority 1s and 2 roads 5 times a month. We do residential once a year, guaranteed, maybe twice, and that's just by the time we get to that trigger, that's the accumulation that we would see. We would do priority 1s and 2s as much as we need to, and then we would move into residential clearing. We would start, for example, at the Colonial neighbourhood, and we will work all the way through to the southeast. If it snows again to the point where we need to re-trigger priority 1s and 2s, we will finish, let's say, 30% of the city. We would go back, clear the priority 1s, the priority 2 roads, and go right back to where we started. The misconception that we've seen with resident responses is that when we see enough snow to go back to priority 1s and 2s, we're doing all the 1s and 2s, then we start in Colonial again. So some streets are getting 2 services while others are only getting 1. That's not the case. Reality is that we would do the priority 1s and 2s, the arterial roads, the range roads, the arterial roads, range roads are priority 1, then priority 2 is the ring roads. We'll go right back to where we left off in the residential clearing program and continue to clear those priority 4 and 5 roads until every single street in Beaumont has had 1 service, and then that would be the totality of our first clear. So the misconception often lies that we will clear the quadrant 1 of that year's roads 3 or 4 times before we get to the last quadrant. That's not the case. We do everything once before we start everything twice.
Just before you continue, Ms. Winter has a comment.
I just wanted to respond back to Councillor Hyde's question with regards to the noxious weeds. That's actually under our community standards bylaw where we have that. And it's enforced through municipal enforcement as our weed inspectors.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's through the bylaw, through that portion of it. Of course, that has to do with residential yards as well then, as well as public.
Yeah, in
refers
the
back.
community standards bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. We'll return back to Councillor Penrod.
Thank you. Appreciate the explanation. If you could just maybe explain for us and for our residents why it's essential that we double back on that snow reset to the 1s and 2s. What are the data points or the considerations that bring us back to those service level or the priority 1s and 2s, and what benefit does the city receive by making sure that those priority 1s and 2s are cleared?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, priority 1s and 2s, as I alluded to earlier, we can maintain between 3 and 5 times a month. The data suggests that at that service level trigger, that's how often we would need to be there. To complete one full residential clear will take 6 weeks. So if we were to not revert back to the priority 1s and 2s, 6 weeks, a month and a half, we're potentially missing 7 services on priority 1s and 2s. The 1s and 2 roads are 50th Street, 50th Ave, and all the range roads. So the streets that likely every resident uses every day to leave the city, enter commercial space, all the schools are on priority 1s and 2s. This is just an effort to keep our highest traffic areas, the ones where there's no room for error, in top maintainable condition all winter long.
Thank you. And just one more point on the ice control, sanding and rock chips. Maybe I misunderstood, but is there a service level change here? I remember a map that showed where rock chips were being applied, but this makes it sound like it will be done kind of under the judgment of the operators. And that, I remember that being a recommendation that came from the consultant's report. So I just wanted to check that. And also the May on the rock chips being available at designated areas through the city. Previously that has been for sure available. Are we looking at pulling that back?
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, you've actually identified one of the improvements that we've made to our service level. So the original service level was a map which clearly identified which intersections would have rock chip and ice control. What this policy says is that we will manage every single intersection on an as-needs basis. So just because the intersection is not marked on the map does not mean the operators won't maintain it. We heard that from that conversation in budget two years ago, and we went about fixing that. So what you've identified is actually an improvement. We will rock chip, ice control every single intersection on an as-needs basis through the inspection program within our team. Secondly, the May in rock chip gives us the ability to increase the rock chip locations. It's not something that we've planned just yet, but under Beaumont growing, we know that there might be an opportunity in the future to offer rock chip at additional locations, and that's why we included that there. So it gives us the ability to scale up.
Appreciate the continuous improvement.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Van der Kwak, go ahead.
Okay, gotta get my thing here. Thank you. Bryce, just a quick question. Actually, I have one question for myself, then I have a question from a resident that had sent us an email. Are the trails also on a priority system in terms of snow clearing in the winter?
Through the chair to Mayor Van der Kwak, yeah, the trails are on our priority system. There's only 2 priorities, priority 1, priority 2. The priority 1 is the main thoroughfare for all the trails to allow high traffic areas, such as around schools or commercial plazas. And then priority 2 would be the connections from residential areas. So priority 1 will allow us to clear that first lot of trails immediately after snow clearing, and then when there's time, we'll go back and hit those priority 2s. Yep.
Okay, good. And then There's a question regarding attachment 1, item 6C, page 3, talking about the removal and disposal of snow. And there was some indication that it had changed to, instead of being plowed to the middle and hauled away, it was plowed to the side and then come back later. Is that correct? What is the current practice right now?
Okay, through the chair to Mayor Van der Kwak, our current practice is plow to the middle and remove. However, in extreme situations where we have a inundation of snow or a large accumulation, we will plow to the side to allow traffic to freely flow. We will come back as soon as we can to plow to the middle and remove.
Okay.
As I said to Councillor Penrod earlier, it takes us 6 weeks to get around residential neighbourhoods. This January was a perfect example. We were forced to plow to the side in residential neighbourhoods to allow residents to leave and come and go as they need to, as well as for emergency standards, emergency vehicle standards, and it just gives us that operational flexibility to handle a large storm event. However, the practice that we will do every day is plow to the middle and remove. That's option 1 and preferable.
Okay, good. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you. Just one quick question. This sparked a question after you had mentioned the priorities for the pathways. Does that follow similar suit to the roads where if we get another snowfall, we're starting back on 1 and then eventually getting to 2?
To the chair, yes, that would be the case. So priority 1 is our priority 1. So if we have consecutive snow events back to back to back, and we're not able to stay on top of it, we will be continuously doing the 1s before we can get to 2s. The 1s are identified as around the schools, around the commercial, high use pathways, and that's why they're prioritized 1 over 2.
Perfect, thank you. I think no need to beat a dead horse, but you hit the nail on the head when you said communication was maybe a gap that previously exists. So appreciate that there's a system going forward where we better communicate and let residents know what's going on, because I think there's a lot of value to that, and I know residents appreciate it. So thank you so much. All right, well, that being said, that is the end of our presentations. Madam Clerk, do we have any new councillor inquiries?
No, we do not have any new councillor inquiries.
Perfect. Well, unless I am missing something, I believe that brings us to adjournment. So that being said, I would like to adjourn this meeting at 8:03 p.m.